Make sure you check out our online store where we work with our graphic designer to create stunning garment and product designs that feature a wide variety of aircraft types such as British fighters, World War II aircraft, American bombers, Russian fighters and much more. You can pick your favourite designs and personalise any items within our Redbubble store that range from clothing right the way through to stationery. All of our designs feature our logo so you can show your support for the channel while getting a quality product. You can head to our website aircrewinterview.tv and click store, or go to redbubble.com/people/AC interview. Thank you and enjoy.
I loved being on the Tornado. Again, I think that when I went through training, so officer training in 86 and start my navigator training 87 at RAF Finningley in Doncaster, you were after, I can't remember the exact time scale, but kind of halfway through what I think was something like an 18-month course, you were streamed about whether you were going to go multi-engined aircraft or fast jets. And I was lucky enough to go what was then called Group 1 fast jets. And then towards the end, you had to decide what aircraft you wanted to fly. And of course, there was a load of aircraft then for navs. Yeah. So, you know, the very best guys wanted to do the Buccaneer, then the Phantom. And the Tornado was a bit further back because it was regarded as much easier crew aircraft, because it was by 1980s technology, it was high tech. By today's technology, a bit of old bloody Microsoft One or something like that. And I remember, you know, they say, what's your preference for postings? And I said, Phantom, Buccaneer, Tornado. And most of us went on the Tornado in actual fact. But I loved it. I loved flying it. I loved being part of the crew. I loved being part of a squadron. And as an aircraft, it's an amazing aircraft to be a nav on, because it's by the standard, it was so up to date, so technological. It's not by today. So then there was no what we would call GPS, global positioning, what most people understand as a sat nav. You know, they sat nav in their car with a digital map that says you're here. None of that existed. So the Tornado had inertial navigation, which meant that you would program in your starting point and allow the inertial navigation to set itself up. That could take 15 minutes on the ground. Nothing was done fast. You're 15 minutes waiting for the IN's not sorted. No, wait. So if there's a massive scramble, you're still waiting for this damn bit of kit to sort itself out. And then the inertial navigation, because of the cogs and the whistles and everything else, would know how fast you are going, what attitude you are at, where you are, and it would basically say, right, I know that you started there, you've been flying at 500 miles an hour for 20 minutes, heading this, so you must now be here.
Yeah.
And it kind of worked, but it just, sometimes it would wander off, and it could be half a mile out, it could be 2 miles out, and so you had to keep the kit updated. That was the nav's role. There was no digital map. You had what was called a moving map, and it was I think it was 35mm film or something like that. Wow. And it rolled through and then was projected onto a screen. And so it was quite old-fashioned by today's standards. And of course, the terrain following radar was an astonishing bit of kit. I mean, astonishing for the time. Mm-hmm. So the terrain following radar, again, when you talk about the first Gulf War and what everybody was doing, I was tweeting about this earlier in the year, and I had serving RAF officers, 2 stars, who I've known for many years, because I'd said, they were hurtling across the desert at 200 feet and they would say, yeah, but you had night vision goggles, John. No, we didn't. Night vision goggles, there was some kicking around, but they were not compatible with a Tornado. And you were not flying into combat wearing night vision goggles. Absolutely not. So the terrain following radar is basically, in the first nights of the Gulf War, is basically looking ahead, looking at the way the sand dunes undulated, the way power lines crossed, the way a radio mast might be there. And the terrain following radar was simply flying the jet with a pilot sitting with his hands on his lap, monitoring the systems. Mm-hmm. Total darkness. You can't see the nose of the aircraft. You can't see the wings. And so it was an incredible bit of kit. And the first time you flew terrain following radar, it took quite a bit of training. We went to Goose Bay in Canada, and you'd be flying an 8 ship, so 8 Tornadoes, parallel track. So you'd have 2 up front, a couple of miles behind, two, right the way down, all 8 jets, and we would fly this in cloud in the valleys and the mountains of Canada to test the system. All 8 jets flying in parallel, and the whole of the attack would be flown in completely automated, using autopilot and terrain following radar, and it was astonishing. And you trusted it. You trusted it implicitly, but it required the kit to be updated. So if you thought you were here, and in actual fact you were here, and some people came really close together. There's a couple of occasions in the Gulf where people have gone into a target at kind of 200 feet in the darkness, and when they reform on the other side, they've crossed over in the dark at the same height at 200 feet, and they haven't realised that they've crossed over. And that happened on a number of occasions for real and in training. Anyway, I'm banging on a bit too much.
Yeah, just because I want to know it just from your new book, one of the blurbs on the back, it gets you straight away, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We were doing about 620 miles per hour, 200 feet above the desert in total darkness. I mean, crazy.
And it was, we designed this cover, and if you look at that, so you've got the Tornado coming down the runway with it under fire and the JP233, and the whole point about it, Mike, was nobody had ever seen anything like this before. We had trained Cold War tactics that, we're talking about the 80s, so we were prepared for a Cold War turning hot, the Soviet Union invading what was then West Germany, so East and West Germany, the Iron Curtain.
Yeah.
And that's what we trained for. So we were really experienced in ultra low flying during the day. We practiced regularly in the couple of areas in the north that were allowed, and in Goose Bay or in Las Vegas on exercise Red Flag, flying down to 100 feet and maybe 540 knots. What's that? 620 mile an hour, something like that. And on terrain following radar at night, 200 feet. And we trained for all of that. And we trained against the Soviet missile systems. We trained in Red Flag. We trained in the Otterburn Ranges. We trained in tactics against fighters. So we have either our fighters coming and attacking us as we're going in, or American fighters or French fighters, Canadian. We trained, but nobody had ever done it for real. Not one single second of combat had been flown until that first night when people did that for real. And I remember Nigel Risdale, who led one of who led the very first sortie. Yeah. So we had 3 major Tornado bases in the Gulf. Each Tornado base set up 8 jets. So 24 Tornadoes are heading across the Saudi-Iraq border in total darkness, like a black cloak over the cockpit. Nobody can see anything other than the glow of the instruments. And they're all 200 feet, 540 knots, heading in towards the target. And Rizza said to me, he said, and we are, because the pilots are clearly monitoring the systems, and the navs are making sure that the systems are updated and keep checking everything else. And Rizza said, so I looked out in my left 10 o'clock, and out of the darkness, a little pinprick of light appeared. And he said, as we flew closer out in the left, he said the pinprick of light started to evolve. And what I could then see was that it was an exploding mesh of AAA fire, interlocking, interweaving, spiraling, AAA anti-aircraft artillery, flak, people would know from the Second World War. Mm-hmm. And he said it's just rising from the ground, and it's forming a dome in an airfield in the distance that is just a wall of exploding cannon fire. And it's just sparkling, like a sparkling Christmas tree light. But they're not lights, they're tubes of molten explosive metal. And he said to John Broadbent, our squadron boss in the back, he said, bloody hell, somebody's been hit over there. And JB said, yes, mate, that's our target. And as he said that, all the jets, because they're all on autopilot, all turned left and all pointed at this dome, this wall of lead. And he said, you couldn't, you couldn't do anything about it. And because it was the first night, he said there wasn't really any time for fear because you couldn't really understand. But he said you got in the middle and you were probably only in it for 10 seconds, 15 seconds as you went in and out, dropping the JP233s on the airfield. He said, but it was like trying to run through a shower without getting wet. And JB, John Broadbent in the back seat, described it for me the best. He said, you know, when you're driving through a really heavy snowstorm and all you can see is the flicker of the snow in your headlights. And then suddenly, the snow starts to whisk past your car window as you go through it. He said, that's what it was like. And he said, you don't know how you're not hitting a flake of snow, which is an exploding bullet. Some people came back with holes in, and obviously as time went on, we started to lose people as well. But the point that I kind of wandered off a bit, nobody had ever seen anything like this. We trained, we prepared, but nobody knew what it was going to be like for real. And it was a shocker on the first night, and it got worse.